Blessed be the fruit, sinners. How are you? On today's installment of the Letterboard of Truth, our quote of the day is, love the sin, hate the sinner. Fornication, coitus, lovemaking, whoopee, dancing the devil's tango. Whatever you want to call it, sex is a natural part of life. Some people choose to participate and others don't. But for all my sex havers out there, it's important that we ask ourselves, how do I honor God while bumping uglies with my significant other? Does the Bible condone showing hole? Can you really, biblically, hit it from the back? These are all valid questions that will be answered over the next several minutes, because we'll be taking a long, regretful look through a Christian website called Biblical Sexology. Biblical Sexology was brought to my attention when someone linked me one of their articles through my Google form, linked in the description. I'll keep it as short as I can, but this is a website called biblicalsexology.com, and it is dedicated to giving sex advice to Christians, mainly Christian women. I'm genuinely serious when I say that this article, as well as the entire website, which I suggest you look into as well, is probably one of the most horrifying things I've ever read. I read it with my very religious mother, and even she was mortified. Since I have found this website, I've been dying to have somebody cover it because it's just so absurd and honestly terrifying. I thought somebody should be talking about it. It's so misogynistic and sexually inaccurate that it made my head spin. Well, anonymous viewer, your wish is my command. After browsing this page for a little, I came to realize that Biblical Sexology is actually the sister site of a different Christian blog called Biblical Gender Roles. Biblical Gender Roles was established in 2014 to act as a guide for how Christians should adhere to gender roles assigned to them in the Bible. Now, Biblical Sexology is a spin-off of Biblical Gender Roles established a few years later, but it mainly focuses on intimacy within Christian marriage. Both websites are managed by a writer who goes under the pen name Larry Solomon. I'm not going to focus too much on Biblical Gender Roles today because I feel like it deserves its own video. However, to give you a preview of what to look forward to for next time, some of Larry's hit articles on Biblical Gender Roles include how to discipline your wife, how to confront your wife/husband for denying you sex, and a Christian husband's guide to grooming his young wife. Excuse me? I didn't realize he hired James Charles as a guest writer. That's awfully progressive of him. However, I need to share my favorite quote from one of the articles I briefly read called, "How Can I Talk to My Wife?" You can't know your wife without talking to your wife. No! Guys, God is literally telling us as husbands, you have to talk to your wife. It's 2022 and straight people are just figuring out that they have to talk to their spouses. Wow. They grow up so fast. However, I still wanted to show you some of Biblical Gender Roles, so you have more of an idea as to where our boy Larry is coming from, and also to prepare you for how awful this video is going to be. You're welcome in advance. But before we start today's Biblical Sex Ed course, let's learn a little more about pleasure and intimacy from our sponsor, Lilo. Oh hi, I'm in a different shirt and I bet you're wondering why I've gathered you all here today. It's 2022 now. It's time that we get rid of the stigma surrounding sex toys and self-pleasure. It's time we stop shaming ourselves for wanting to explore our desires. If anything, exploring the world of self-pleasure is a good thing as it allows us to effectively communicate our needs to our partner. And in my opinion, sex toys are an amazing way to own your pleasure. That is why I've decided to partner with Lilo for today's video. Lilo is an adult toy company founded in 2003, and it has long established itself as the luxury pleasure brand, leading the market in design, innovation, technology, and reputation. Something I love about Lilo is that it's not just an adult toy brand, it's a self-care movement aimed at those who know that satisfaction transcends gender, sexual orientation, race, and age. For this month, Lilo sent me one of their featured products called the CeeLo Cruise. The CeeLo Cruise is a sonic massager specifically designed for sex toy beginners on the verge of sensual exploration. What stuck out to me about the Sela Cruise in particular is how it manages to be aesthetically pleasing and approachable at the same time. I appreciate how Lilo's geared the Sela Cruise towards people who want to learn more about adult toys and self-pleasure. You can follow your senses and find out what feels good at your own pace. Sela's sonic waves offer a gentle stimulation, allowing you to enjoy the intensities without making direct contact. The Sela Cruise's soft, wide mouth fits a vast range of anatomies, while the pleasure is dispersed to offer a slow, full-body experience. Lilo's Sela Cruise comes in 3 gorgeous colors, with 8 modes to choose from depending on your mood, and a user time of up to 2 hours. If you'd like to try out the Sela Cruise for yourself, all you gotta do is click the link at the top of the description. Thank you so much to Lilo for supporting my channel. Now let's get back to your scheduled programming. Hello and welcome back, heathens. Keep in mind that as we learn more about biblical sexology, that this blog is for married couples and married couples only. So while you're out there having premarital sex, you know what's actually getting screwed? Your chances of going to heaven. In all seriousness, this video isn't meant to shame Christians or religious people in general. I understand that a lot of folks find comfort and peace in religion, and I respect that. I respect your right to practice your religion, as long as you're not harming others or yourself. However, I would argue that Larry's beliefs are actively harming others. Not only is he incredibly misogynistic, but he also pushes the toxic ideals of purity culture throughout his writings, and we'll explore that the further we go on. So when I first arrived to biblical sexology, I immediately clicked the biblical sex ed tab because that's where I imagined the juicy content was. Because honestly, truly, no one cares about the expositions or the about page. That's not what we're here for. We're here to learn how to raw dog our partners the way the good Lord intended. Anyway, once I got there, boom, immediate trauma thanks to this graphic. The internet was a grave mistake. You will be paying for your war crimes, Lawrence. And my therapy bills. With that being said, I guess the best way to dive into biblical sexology is to start with the basics. So the first article we'll be reading is called The 10 Rules of Sex for Wives. Apparently a woman named Monica wrote in to share the 10 rules of sex her husband set for their marriage, and to quote her directly, "Following his rules has led to a healthy sexual relationship and marriage." We'll be the judge of that. Let's begin. Rule 1. Obedience means complete obedience, no exceptions. If you can pick and choose when to obey, you aren't actually being obedient. Sex is an important part of marriage, and being totally sexually obedient to your husband is part of your vows. Respect your husband's authority over you in every aspect of your life, as God intended. Right off the bat, the writer is already infantilizing women, which is a very prevalent issue in Christianity. Many secular women also fall victim to this, and their experiences are valid as well. Specifically in Christian spaces, infantilization occurs as the result of complementarianism, which is the idea that men and women serve different but complementary roles in marriage, family life, and religious leadership. It sounds innocent enough on the surface, but since we live in a society, this way of thinking more so benefits men and leaves women at a disadvantage. Christian women are taught that they don't have the skills to be self-sufficient and independent, thus they need a big, strong man to make all the decisions for them. This, unfortunately, makes Christian women easier to control since they might not know how to advocate for themselves, and in turn, they become more susceptible to ending up in situations. Of course, this isn't the case for every single Christian woman, but that doesn't take away from the fact that this is a huge problem Christians face, whether they know it or not. So already we're not off to a great start. Number 2, your main pleasure from sex comes from you pleasing your husband. Sometimes sex will be physically pleasurable for you, and sometimes it won't be physically pleasurable for you. But either way, if you satisfy your husband, then you will be fulfilled knowing that you have pleased your man. I mean, I agree that it's important to please your partner in the bedroom, but your needs are also just as valid, and it's important for both partners to communicate their desires so everyone's satisfied. Your husband carries great responsibility as the head of your household. It is very stressful to be your family's leader, provider, and protector, and sex is an important way to relieve that stress. It's so funny to me when these kind of Christians impose such strict gender roles and then complain when they have to follow them. Sometimes your husband is going to demand sex at an inconvenient time or when you're tired. Remember that he probably needs a physical release to help him get through a hard day. And you know what that's called? Marital rape. I talked about this in greater detail in a previous video of mine, but the definition of marital rape is any unwanted sexual acts by a spouse or ex-spouse that is committed without the other person's consent. Such illegal sexual activity are done using force, threat of force, intimidation, or when a person is unable to consent. You are not entitled to your partner's body. Ever. And that does not change once you sign a marriage certificate. I don't care what 2,000-year-old book told you otherwise, but you are not entitled to your partner's bodily autonomy. It does not matter how horny you are. No means no. This is literally a concept we learn as toddlers. Enthusiastic consent is required for all forms of intimacy. If you have to convince or guilt your partner into being intimate with you, that is coercion, which is not the same as consent. And if you can't grasp that as a grown married adult, that's really fucking pathetic. Not to mention illegal. Something tells me that this guy would be great friends with Yogi Obes. And that's not a good thing. Number 4, a man wants an enthusiastic sexual partner. Sometimes you're gonna feel that what your husband demands of you is degrading or humiliating. Your obligation is to submit to him, so always have a smile on your face and an eager to please attitude when your husband demands your sexual service, no matter what it is. I understand that some people enjoy being degraded or humiliated during sex, and as long as everything's consensual, I don't have a problem with it. However, I don't think that's what the writer's talking about. The way I interpret this rule is that the wife is obliged to give in to any demand from her husband for the sake of his pleasure, which, like I stated before, that is not consent, that is coercion. If one partner isn't comfortable doing a certain act, then you don't do that certain act. I don't care if it hurts his feelings because the husband's not entitled to sex. Number 5, every man has his own personal sexual needs and desires, and your responsibility is to meet those needs the way your husband chooses. He's going to train you to please him the way he wants, and you need to work your hardest to learn what he likes and always be attentive to his particular needs and preferences. First of all, never say that you should train a woman. Okay, she's not a dog, she's a human being. I think rule number 2 was very similar to this, and I agreed that it's important for both partners to voice their desires. But if you want your partner to be attentive towards your needs, like you said at the very end, then you need to give that same energy back. I mean, it's only fair. Number 6, men are visual creatures and you need to keep your body in shape and always look your best. Work out and eat right to keep slim and sexy. Pay attention to your hair and makeup even if you are just at home. Embrace body modifications if your husband thinks they will enhance your beauty. What the fuck? Women can't even wear sweatpants in their own home. Oh, because Zachariah wants you in a dress and heels for 16 hours a day? Give me a break, dude. I love how they're using the excuse that men are visual creatures to justify their creepy behavior. Like, this is one of the most tired, misogynistic arguments that Christians use. When I say the writer advocates for purity culture, this is what I mean. They're taking men's sexual desires and putting that responsibility onto women. So now these women have to dress and act a certain way in order to appease these men. It's not right. Like, this is some of the most toxic advice I've ever read. Number 7, dress the way that your husband instructs. Men like to show off their wives. You are your husband's prize. So they're not even hiding the fact that they view women as objects. I mean, as if it wasn't crystal clear before. Wearing revealing clothing does not make you a slut. You can be a faithful Christian wife and also look like a sexy, desirable woman when your husband takes you out to dinner or out on the town or to the beach. It might take you some time to feel comfortable with some outfits, but you will be happy when you sense your husband's pride when he shows you to the world and lets people know you belong to him. Women aren't your trophies to show off to the world because we're not objects. We are our own individual beings. Although it's quite evident that Christians like this writer do not feel the same way. To men like this writer, we are viewed as commodities. Whenever I make this type of video, I always wonder if these kind of men actually love women or if they love being in control. At this point, I'm almost certain it's the latter. So I feel like these rules are starting to blend together because they're all worded the same pretty much. So I'm gonna breeze through these last couple of rules so we can move on. Number 8, the Bible is very clear that your husband is your master. Kinky, and that God expects you to always respect his absolute authority over you and to serve and obey him in every way. As my husband has told me many times, I can do things the hard way or the easy way, but either way I'm going to do them. So take the easy way by submitting to him with a smile on your face. Number 9, sometimes your husband will need to punish you when you fall short of his expectations. Be grateful that he takes the time to correct your behavior and thank him for helping to make you a better Christian wife. Ew. Number 10, a sexually satisfied husband makes for a happy home and marriage, and the key to a sexually satisfied husband is a wife who thinks of his sexual pleasure and embraces her submission to him. Be your husband's sexual pet, always cheerful and humbly grateful for being the woman that he has chosen to please him. That was awful, but if you dislike that article, then you're really gonna fucking hate this next one. A biblical guide to ravish your husband. For a woman, the difference between slutty and sexy is one word: marriage. Proverbs 5:19 tells husbands to be ravished with their wife's love. For a man to be ravished, his wife must act in ravishing ways towards him. Let thy fountain be blessed, and rejoice with the wife of thy youth. Let her be as the loving hind and pleasant roe. Let her breast satisfy thee at all times, and be thou ravished always with her love. Now that is a Tinder bio, if I've ever seen one. Ravishing principle number 1. Ravish him with your desire for him. Ravishing a man starts with desire. You can't ravish a man to whom you show no desire. Think about it another way from your perspective as a woman. If you're like 99% of women, you want your husband to sit down and talk with you. If your husband sits down to talk and acts like he really does not want to, but he has to, is that satisfying for you? Of course it's not. In the same way as a wife, you need to cultivate a sexual desire for your husband. So step 1, we have to desire our husband. Okay, I can do that. Number 2, ravish him with your eyes. Are you one of those women that says to your husband when he gives you the look, "I know that look and you aren't getting any today"? Or do you flirt back with your eyes? Would you even consider starting the flirting with your eyes? This is what is called for as part of ravishing your husband. You could be at a friend or family member's house. You could be sitting in some boring school meeting for your kids. You can be in line at the grocery store together. All it takes is a look to stoke the fire and ravish your husband's heart. So for step 2 in ravishing our husband, we gotta look at him. We gotta look at him with the look. I actually have looked at a person before. Multiple people, in fact, so this step should be pretty easy for me. Number 3, ravish him with your lips and your tongue. Do not underestimate the powerful effect that your kisses can have on your husband. Kissing is a powerful teasing mechanism to ravish your husband, and it is also an essential part of the sexual act itself. I've heard of women who rarely, if ever, kiss their husbands except to give him a kiss on the cheek. And how unnatural and unloving is it that a couple could have sexual relations and never kiss in this most intimate way the entire time? Yet, this happens far too often in many Christian bedrooms. The Song of Solomon shows us that Christian women are to be letting their husbands get some tongue action. Yep, right there, we see French kissing in the Bible. So let's do a quick recap, okay? To ravish our husband, we need to look at him. No, we need to desire him, look at him, and then kiss him. This is a cakewalk, people. We're gonna be ravishing our husband in no time. Number 4, ravish him with your body parts. The allusion here in Song of Solomon chapter 2 verse 9 is that of her husband looking through windows at her or looking through a wood screen that had vines on it. He was basically peeping at his wife. And guess what? It is perfectly okay for a man to peep at his wife anytime he wishes. Maybe don't do that. I could have titled this section, Ravish Him with Your Beauty, but that would not have driven home the point that needs to be made to women. Women tend to see a man's physical attraction in holistic terms, where men see women as a collection of parts. It is routine for men to say, she has nice breasts, but her rear end is not as great, or she has great legs, but she is flat-chested. Women have a harder time breaking down men in this way, and this is probably one of the hardest things for women to understand about the male nature. Using the male nature to justify your creepy way of describing women? Check. In fact, this idea of men breaking women down by their various body parts infuriates many women. I wonder why. You want to ravish your husband with your beauty? When you're wearing that pretty blouse and slacks, randomly pull up your shirt and show him your breasts. Sometimes instead of wearing that dainty blouse and pants, you should find a nice tight pair of jeans or shorts if it's warm, and a tight-fitting V-neck t-shirt that will accentuate your breasts and reveal a little cleavage, and make sure you tease him with your cleavage. Tease him by accidentally dropping something in front of him and bend over in front of him in those tight jeans or shorts. He really said do the bend and snap. The husband of the Song of Solomon, like all men, asks his wife to let me see thy countenance. Your husband wants to see your form. Just the sight of you brings him great pleasure. Is that countenance in your pants, or are you just happy to see me? Let me make sure I have everything so far, okay? We have to desire him, look at him, kiss him, and show boob.
I have boob. I could do that.
Number 5, ravish him by tasting of his apple tree. This is gonna be a rough one. In ancient Middle Eastern poetry, the apple tree was a euphemism for a man's genitals. The image that the woman sitting under his shadow portrays that of a man standing over top of his wife with his shadow over her and her down below him performing fellatio. The scripture tells us that she did this with great delight, or in other words, with enthusiasm and desire. What is the fruit of his tree? It was his semen.
Okay.
The woman says of her husband's semen that it was sweet to my taste. A wife shows her submission to her husband when she kneels before him and takes his apple tree in her mouth. A wife shows her full acceptance of her husband when she does this act with great delight, showing her husband that she craves the sweet taste of his fruit. I'm spitting. A wife shows her sacrificial spirit when, after performing fellatio on her husband to its natural completion, she asks for nothing in return. A Christian man gets head once and then starts a website called Biblical Sexology. Number 6. Ravish him by inviting him to taste your pomegranate. In the same way that the apple tree was a euphemism for a man's genitals in ancient Middle Eastern erotic poems, many women think of cunnilingus as something that is simply for their own pleasure. In other words, their husband is only doing it to please them and he gets little to nothing out of the act. But this could not be further from the truth in most cases. God forbid, a man does something for a woman in the bedroom. Because men are such physical beings, they are often drawn to perform cunnilingus on their wives, and this gives a man great pleasure to experience his wife's body in this way. Until the day break and the shadows flee away, I will get me to the mountain of myrrh and to the hill of frankincense. Now, if I was straight and a man said this about my vagina, I would dry up faster than you can say cunnilingus. We have finally reached the last article of the day, and it is called, Should Christian Wives Fake It? As in fake the O, the big O, if you will. If you were to ask me, I would say no. I think the best course of action is to sit down with your partner and explain what's going on, and then come up with a solution so going forward, both of you are satisfied in the bedroom. But judging by what we know about the writer, I don't think that's the advice he's gonna give. Should I fake having sexual pleasure with my husband? This is a question a lot of Christian wives ask. Some may frame the question in a way that seems to force an answer. They might say, isn't faking it a form of lying? And God never wants us to lie, right? This is kind of like asking a man, when did you stop beating your wife? It presupposes something to be true. Lying is not always wrong in God's eyes, in the same way that killing is not always wrong. If a person is killed because of just punishment by the state, or a soldier is killed in battle, or someone is killed in an act of self-defense, there is no sin in it. But if we kill someone out of selfishness or hate for other sinful reasons, then it becomes murder, and therefore the killing in that instance is sin. So in this next part, he actually gives 2 scenarios where the wife doesn't have to fake it Reason number 1 is when the pain is abnormal. What I mean by that is I have heard from many Christian women on this subject that deal with chronic pain, whether it is in the vaginal area or elsewhere. Sometimes you may have big flare-ups or some unusual pain that you have never felt before. In this case, you need to let your husband know, and if he is being loving, he will understand. But if you experience regular and chronic pain, you may need to sacrifice some comfort for the short period when sex occurs to meet the needs of your husband and your marriage. Some women actually get a short reprieve from their chronic pain if they have an orgasm. So I looked up the last part to see if it was true, and it is. The endorphins released from O's can actually help manage chronic pain. So if you do experience chronic pain and you want to use that method to alleviate some discomfort, that is totally up to you. If he is being rough, there may be some times where a husband has rough sex with his wife in an effort to display his dominion over her, to show her that she was made for him, not him for her, to remind her that she is to submit to him in everything, to show her that sex is not always all about her comfort and her wishes, but rather that God made her for her husband's sexual use and satisfaction. In either of these two cases, a woman does not need to fake that this experience is pleasurable for her. Now, in the case of rough sex, some women may actually find this pleasurable, and if you as a wife find this pleasurable, then by all means display it to your husband. Like, yes, some people do enjoy pain in the bedroom, but if your partner is clearly not into it and they're expressing discomfort, you should stop immediately. Just because you're into it, that doesn't mean your partner will be as well. This is yet another example of coercion under the guise that wives need to worry about their husband's sexual pleasure to the point where they need to ignore their pain. Like, this advice is actually disgusting. Every time you have sex and are not genuinely feeling sexual pleasure from your husband, and it is not for the two reasons I mentioned above, you should fake it. No, you shouldn't have to fake it. You should communicate so both of you can enjoy the experience. And the man in this case should stop being selfish and learn to please his wife in the way that she wants. You're using the Bible as an excuse to be lazy in the bedroom, if I'm being honest. But shouldn't wives enjoy sex too? Absolutely. God wants women to enjoy sex too. This is why God gave women many erotic zones, including but not limited to her clitoris. Think about it. The clitoris only exists for one reason, and that is pleasure. Unlike a man's penis, which serves other functions, there is no other functional reason for a woman's clitoris. It is one of many gifts God has given to man in the form of woman. Now wait a minute. How can a woman's clitoris be a gift to a man? Is it not also a gift to woman? Yes, it is a gift to woman as well. But we must always remember that woman was created for man. Neither were a woman's breasts created for herself, but rather they were created for man. Neither was a woman's vagina created for herself, but rather her vagina was created for man. Neither was a woman's clitoris created for her, but rather her clitoris was created for man. The point is that even a woman's ability to experience sexual pleasure through clitoral stimulation was not given to her for herself, but rather it was given to her to enhance her husband's sexual pleasure. So this is a prime example of objectification. Just like in the previous articles, you're admitting that you only see your wife as a collection of body parts that you're entitled to. You don't see her as a person with a choice. You don't give her a say in any matter. And you claim it's due to the fact that God designed men and women for different reasons, but you're just using this as a method of manipulation and control. Now, I could write this whole blog off as just one toxic, misogynistic Christian man who's never been told no in his life, and now he's making it everyone else's problem. But he has a platform, and he's incentivizing the men in his audience that taking advantage of women and objectifying them is okay. To believe that you don't need consent in order to get what you want in the bedroom. To believe that you're entitled to a woman's body just because you're a man. You are cultivating a dangerous environment for women everywhere. You're making it so much harder for women to advocate for themselves, and that's exactly what you want. You want women to feel powerless so that they can't speak out on your shitty behavior. The writer's relationship with sex is selfish, dehumanizing, misogynistic, toxic. I can go on and on. But I guess the message that I want you all to take away from this video is that you deserve to be heard. You deserve respect, love, compassion, empathy, traits that the writer of biblical sexology surely does not possess. No one is entitled to intimacy from you, and if they make you feel otherwise, run the other way. Relationships should be treated like a partnership and not a dictatorship. Everyone involved deserves to have their needs met. And if you or a loved one are stuck in a relationship similar to the ones described today, I will leave resources in the description for you to check out. I will be making personal donations to these organizations, and I encourage you to do the same if you have the means to. And if not, sharing the links is just as important because every victim deserves help. That was Biblical Sexology for you. If you would like to see a part 2 sometime in the future, let me know down below. Or if you're looking forward to me talking about biblical gender roles in the future, let me know in the comments as well. And in general, if you want me to talk about a certain topic, I have a Google form linked in the description where you can submit potential video ideas. Thank you so much for watching today's video. Make sure to give it a tiny, 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 tiny thumbs up and subscribe down below. Thank you again to Lilo for sponsoring today's video. I love you guys, and I'll see you next time with a brand new video. Bye!